Hey guys, so I'm straight up not having a good time watching Kansas State football this season, and I hope you're doing a little bit better than I am, but if you're watching this video, you've probably hit the same icebergs I have, or at least the same ones Kansas State football has, and that's not a very fun time. So, regardless, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for thugging it out with me. Even though the Cats aren't very good, I know you're good, and I appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Today we're talking about the Cats. It's what we do on this channel. Win or lose, we're talking about the Cats. I know that's not necessarily how the saying goes, win or lose, we booze, but win or lose, we Cats, I guess. There's no rhyme I've got on the head yet. One day it'll come to me. But today we're talking about the nail in the coffin, at least in my mind, of the 2025 season, the loss to Texas Tech. Now, I'm not one to break down losses super in-depth and tell you why everything happened. 5 turnovers. There you go. Bam. That's the whole analyst side of my brain. Today I want to talk about the big picture. That's what we're going to do. When things suck in the small picture, we're going to look at the big picture. We're going to take a step back, try to generate some background around the immediate picture, and draw some comparisons or draw some, I guess, where the hell do we go from here isms in this video. And that's what I kind of want to do. So first things first, hit the subscribe button. If you're already subscribed to the channel, be sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, interact however you can with the team sucking. These videos don't do as well. They don't get out as well. But it's not all about views, but I do appreciate those who do interact and help out. But I also appreciate the silent majority of you who just kind of rock out with me and watch behind the screen. So if that's you, any of those, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. But let's jump into what I have to say, folks. The Cats season is over. It is. I mean, I know there's 3 more games left in the next 4 weeks. It's effectively done. Stick a fork in us, stick a fork in me. We are absolutely done, if not overcooked. Now, with that, we are sitting here staring at 6-6, and that's not so fun. Maybe 7-5 at best. You win the next 3, great. I don't think you're going to win on the road at Utah, but say you pull a rabbit out of the hat, we're still 7-5. That really, really sucks. Kansas State is not where they need to be. They haven't been where they need to be for the past 3 seasons. Since the Big 12 title in 2022, things have slowly been going downhill. And you can look at that for 100 different aspects. You can look at, whether it's recruiting, whether it's this, whether it's that. I would argue and say recruiting has been up, at least at the high school level, but there's been a lot of issues. Let's take a look at the last 3 seasons as a whole, and that's been a problem. The big picture, like I said, the portal classes haven't been talented enough. We've been losing the line of scrimmage, areas we used to dominate. Game management has been awful. The schedule has been a problem. We'll talk about that. I know you know what I'm referring to with Gene Taylor in the Iowa State game, but things have not been good enough. And they've been good, but they haven't been good enough. There is a fine line between solid and really damn good. And unfortunately for us, the Cats have to stay as close as humanly possible to that line and straddle it with one leg on either side of it. They're not exactly really damn good, and they're not exactly just okay. They find a way to be a little bit of both at times where it doesn't make sense, and that really, really sucks. I've got my notes over here. If you see me looking this way, that's why I've got it pulled up. Like I said, the portal classes haven't been good enough. You have some studs. I'm not going to dunk on this whole roster. The roster has talent. I'm not going to sit here and say it hasn't. Jerron Tibbs, Quay Moss, by far the 2 best additions in the portal. I would argue that George Fitzpatrick is going to be that, but the guy, had a whole health situation. You can't really hold that against him, but he was one of the guys I expected to be a top contributor on paper. That hasn't matured because of stuff off the field you can't necessarily control. That sucks. So the portal class has some dogs. They have guys that hit. It hasn't been a night and day difference. Like, you look at the top 7 portal classes, the top 10 portal classes, every single one of those teams is pretty damn good right now. That really stinks for Kansas State, who struggled this offseason. You add some players and pieces that are out-kicking their coverage. It's what Kansas State does. But all in all, there hasn't been enough talent. There hasn't been enough difference makers. And you need dudes to win football games. Kansas State hasn't had that. The dudes they have had are guys that are homegrown local guys. You get the Des Purnells of the world. Avery Johnson's been really, really good this season. Obviously, tough outing against Texas Tech, but it is what it is. We'll talk about that. But things at Kansas State just haven't been improving the way they should, and you can't afford to let that happen in the new look Big 12. There's good teams, but there is such a power vacuum right now, a power dynamic that you can seize up and become that team that everybody looks at and says, okay, they've got a real shot. There's so much of that out there. Kansas State has done everything they can to keep it at arm's length and stiff-arm the opportunity to be that team. That really sucks. Now, I think our athletic director is kind of an idiot for giving away a home game against a team that is clearly inferior looking at it now. Yeah, we suck. Iowa State looks awful now. That game in mid-November against this Iowa State team is a different game. Now, do I think Gene Taylor's an idiot? No. I think that was an idiotic move, but I don't think the guy's an idiot. That's a dumb decision. We'll move past it. The offensive line is absolutely garbage. And 10,000 feet view here, I'm hearing myself say everything I'm saying. Let me just say this now. I'm not here to be a Debbie Downer. I'm a guy that talks about the Cats. I'm going to tell you my opinions. You don't have to agree with them all. I will totally respect and understand whatever you're going to say and vice versa. You're allowed your opinions. I'm allowed mine. This is just kind of the cut and dry way of looking at Kansas State football right now from the mind of a semi-rational fan. I feel like semi-sane guy. But yeah, the offensive line's been horrible. That's it. I truly mean horrible. Nobody is very good on this offensive line. Sam Heck's been pretty damn good, so I guess I shouldn't say that. But, you know, the guards haven't been great. The tackles have been piss poor. A lot of that is George Fitzpatrick being hurt. But, like, things haven't been good on the offensive line. That's an area you need to be successful at in the Big 12, especially at a school like Kansas State. You're not going to add 5-star offensive linemen. You're not going to add 4-star offensive linemen every cycle. You need to develop players, get your hands on players with real impact guys. This season, Connor Riley's been one of the biggest losses in college football, especially at Kansas State. No matter what the group was, that offensive line was legit. This season, it hasn't been there. That's a problem. Now, like I said, I'm looking at the macro. That's a little bit more micro, but we're in the midst of a 3 straight years, I shouldn't say it that way, but 3 years in a row of disappointment. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe disappointment for you isn't 9 wins. Maybe disappointment for you isn't 8 wins. I don't need to define that line. A title is where this team needs to set their expectations. If you're going into every season with the Chris Klieman quote of, hey, not a lot of teams have won 9 games every single year, that's great. How many rings do we have to show for that? How many college football playoff appearances do we have to show for that? Now, I'm not here to say that like you need to be in the playoff every year to succeed, but you need the opportunity. And Kansas State has been just beneath that opportunity, and this roster that had every bit of that opportunity has looked nothing like a college football playoff contender except for isolated weeks or even isolated quarters. There's no consistency. There's no quarter-to-quarter consistency. There's no game-to-game consistency. Offense, defense, don't even get me started about special teams. This team has been disgusting to watch relative to the expectations. Now, part of that is the outside noise. Part of the expectations are too elevated. I'm sure I was part of that to an extent. Then again, also, nobody probably listens to me seriously because, you know, just a dude in a room talking to a mic. The point is, we cannot be scraping by with 8 wins and expecting that to be the benchmark of where we're headed. The last 3 seasons, since the Big 12 title in 2022, K-State is 14-10 in conference play. That's not very good. That is really not very good. It's above, 500, but you're not very far ahead of 500. We're scraping, 8 to 9 wins, making okay bowl games against Big Ten teams or the Pop-Tarts Bowl, or, that can be successful to some programs. That's a huge step for some programs. It's a huge consistency barrier. Like Nebraska didn't make a bowl game forever. Now they make a bowl game that's pretty dang good. Kansas State is not that. We've made bowl games forever. We need to be more than just a consistent 6, 7, 8 win team, especially in the era you're in now where guys have NIL. We have support from, the alumni, the fan base, everybody. Like, this thing could be so much better than it is. And that's kind of what this whole video is to say. This team's going to finish 6-6 or 7-5 and be one of the most talented teams we've had in the last decade on paper. Now, I want to say this because this is a good way to look at it. There's an element of minor changes that can occur that can change the culture, that can change things. I don't really question K-State's culture right now. I question the talent, the execution, and just about everything else. Like, you can fire an offensive coordinator, change an offensive coordinator, and that can help out an offense. You can fire a receiver coach. You can fire a positions coach. You can fire whatever, and it will change in the micro. K-State's issues have been building up for multiple seasons, and I'm not going to sit there and say it's Chris Klieman's fault. It truly just feels like a time where it's ready for a new direction of Kansas State football. The way I say this, and I'll give the PSA here in a second, so don't click off this video if you hear something you don't like. Just hear me out. Give me a little bit of patience here, a little bit of grace. There is credit to go around. I will always appreciate Chris Klieman for his contributions, for finding success at Kansas State. For someone without the last name Snyder, that was a huge deal for Kansas State, and now getting us to the point where we can afford to be at the next level of, hey, 10 wins is our expectation, 11 wins. That's a huge deal. You're the next transition point to the next coach we have whenever that time comes. I'm not advocating to fire Chris Klieman. That's not what I'm going to sit here and say. I truly believe, and I don't have sources on this, I don't have an insider, I don't have any of that stuff. This is just what my heart's telling me. I believe at the end of this season, with all the highs and lows that have been the Chris Klieman era, with some of the health concerns, with all the stuff off the field, it feels like it's time for Chris Klieman to retire. And I think he deserves that. Now, I'm sure maybe he doesn't want to go out this way. Maybe he doesn't want XYZ thing to happen. The reality is this. When you win 6 games in a transfer portal heavy era or 7 games in this era, you will not have much continuity or stability going forward. I know Klieman, and I've said it a million times, he has found a way to provide stability in an unstable, unshakable era of college football that has no stability. Chris Klieman's found that. The issue is the stability can only get you so far when you're not taking that next step. I believe that if Kansas State runs this thing back, they hire a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, and I'm not even sure they do that with Chris Klieman. I feel like the roster is going to go up in smoke, and you're truly entering a rebuild with a guy who's probably only 2 years away from retirement. So I say that Kansas State needs to understand what's at stake here. Look around. Collin Klein is the guy that we all want. Collin Klein's the guy that's got to be here. I'll address the whole he should go elsewhere here in a second, because that's just not happening. But I don't want this to be a fire Chris Klieman video. That's not what I'm saying. But I believe the guy's ready for retirement. I think he's had a great career in college football, multiple national championships at the FCS level, a Big 12 title, developed countless NFL draft picks, turned multiple quarterbacks that were slept on, that were kicked down into NFL draft picks and decade-plus career starters. Maybe not starters, but career NFL football players. That's a big deal. But Father Time's undefeated. I mean, it's going to come for everyone. It's going to get LeBron one day. It's going to get, all these different players that you say that's never going to happen. Patrick Mahomes in 10 years might be an old guy that can't throw the football 25 yards. Like, you're going to see Father Time kick a lot of dudes' asses that we don't think they should kick the asses of. It feels like Father Time is sitting right across the table from Chris Klieman, and they're playing a poker game. I'm not so sure Chris Klieman can beat him this hand. That's the way I feel about it. It doesn't mean fire the guy, but look to someone new, look to someone younger, a new direction for Kansas State football, and it has to be Collin Klein. Now, if it's not, here's what I want to say. The future is completely out the window. I'm not going to completely embrace all the negativity, all the everything else, but I've made a video. If I remember in editing or when I post this, I'll link my full thoughts on Collin Klein somewhere up here, so be sure and look on that video. But Kansas State is at a point where they can't afford to swing and miss. There won't be another 3-0 pitch coming. Like, it is a full count. If you miss this pitch, you're getting your ass sent back to the dugout. There's not going to be a 3-2 meatball. You're going to have to chase one here and hope to make contact. Now, Collin Klein is the best option for Kansas State football going forward. He's young. He's hungry. He's got SEC ability now. And I know that he doesn't have head coaching experience. And for the minority of you guys that say, well, he should probably go somewhere like Colorado State to get his feet under him and then come to Kansas State. Guys, forget about that. It will not happen. He's getting a power conference job, if not an SEC or Big Ten job, this cycle. Don't believe me? Listen to this. Collin Klein is leading a top 5, and I say top 5, he's leading the 3rd-ranked team in the country, the offense of that team, with a quarterback that everybody said couldn't throw. That guy looks like a damn near Heisman finalist right now. They're averaging nearly 38 points per game, 459.3 yards per game of total offense, and Kansas State right now, under Matt Wells, under Chris Klieman, we're about 10 less than that in the points per game department, about 100 less than in the yards department. We're averaging 29.8 points per game, 362.4 yards per game. You do not lead the best, one of the best offenses in college football and dominate the SEC in conference play, looking for a college football playoff berth, and not get major consideration. He's going to interview for Oklahoma State. He's going to interview for a lot of these openings. If Drinkwitz goes to somewhere else, I would believe he'd interview for Missouri, which would just be awful. But I truly believe that you're sitting at a point where if you miss Collin Klein, you're screwing yourself over for the next 2-3 years. And if it's just a 1-year thing to try to say, all right, let's get let's get Chris Klieman out on the right foot, why? Why are you doing that? I know you can't force the guy to retire, but there are conversations that need to take place in the building for the future of Kansas State football. And I'm one of those guys that thinks if you hire Collin Klein, I think the roster will be largely less entering the transfer portal. I can't take it away. It'll be less fluid than if you kept Chris Klieman. I think more players will enter the portal if you kept Klieman around this year than if you brought in Collin Klein. Now, I can't speak for the big names. Jace is one of the best receivers in college football. He might be playing for an LSU next year. He might be playing for an Alabama next year. And I don't think K-State fans would judge him all that much, truly. I know that sucks to say, but you have stars in college football. You need to win if you want to retain those guys. Avery Johnson has gotten so much heat, has gotten so much flack. That dude's K-State through and through. I pray he's back next year because he's truly shown another step forward, even though he's got another gear in him. I know he's got some mistakes here and there, but that kid's on the verge of being something incredible in college football, and you don't want to miss out on that. That said, it's very likely that some of these guys do hit the portal. Collin Klein is the best shot to stabilize this roster, to keep guys like Chase Brown, to keep guys like Jerron Tibbs, who I think are stars in college football, to keep an Avery Johnson. Now, there's going to be holes. The running back room is wide open. We'll see what happens at tight end. You've got 5 dudes. I'd be shocked if 3 of them don't transfer just because of more opportunity. Doesn't necessarily mean they don't want to be at K-State, but you need dudes on the offensive line. You need people on the defensive line. You're going to lose multiple guys just out of seniority. Uso and Damian Ilalio are gone after this year. The DB room needs some dudes. You need somebody in the secondary. VJ Payne's gone, even though he's been bad this year. Gunnar Maldonado will be gone. There's a lot of guys you need to add pieces to. I guarantee Austin Romaine declares for the draft. I can't see a lot of this stuff necessarily working out for a one-year rebuild under a coach that's not going to be here through a rebuild. That's the way I want to say that. But in closing, for this video at least, I'm going to be talking more about college basketball going forward. We'll still talk about the Cats football. We got 3 more weeks of this, at least in terms, I guess 4 weeks including the bye, but we'll talk about the Cats more on the football field, and I cannot wait to cover the transfer portal. We'll see what the hell happens. I'm sure it's going to be crazy. But in closing, the crowning achievement of the season was extending the streak. So if you're one of those guys like the inverse of what some Ohio State fans are, where they're like, we need to fire Ryan Day because he can't beat Michigan. If you're comfortable with beating your rival and going 6-6 instead of being, losing to Kansas and then still winning the Big 12 or something like that, you got what you wish for. It just comes with a couple of clouds. Kansas State extended the streak. That's awesome. This team isn't very good. That's the outcome. You need to do the necessary things to make that so it's not an issue next year. You need to find a good football team led by the right people. And I think Collin Klein and Chris Klieman are both incredible coaches, incredible men. This is nothing personal to either guy. I'm not calling for one man's livelihood and putting him up against another. It's just the reality of college football. It's the reality of the way the world works. It's an industry based on results. What have you done for me lately? If you haven't done anything for me lately, you're not going to stick around to tell me what you're going to do next. That's the way it goes. But for this video, I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to kind of get my thoughts out there. I'll have a video again tomorrow or the next day talking about K-State basketball. But for now, that's the way I feel. Please let me know your comments, your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll talk to you all later. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Go Cats.